What if the biggest stars in the world made movies so bad the studios wanted to hide them? In 1976, that is exactly what happened. Marlon Brando, Paul Newman, Liza Minnelli, none of them could save these films. Millions of dollars burned up on screen. Careers cracked. Legends looked foolish. Today we count down the 18 worst box office disasters of 1976. And wait for the one even Elizabeth Taylor could not rescue. Number 18. Future World. Let us start with a sequel that thought it was a sure thing. In 1973, a small movie called Westworld became a surprise hit. It was about a fancy robot theme park where the machines turned deadly. So the studio rushed out a follow-up in 1976 called Future World. They were sure the money would pour in. It did not. The movie is about two reporters. Peter Fonda and Blythe Danner play them. They get invited to the newly reopened Delos Resort, the same park where robots once went crazy and killed guests. The company says everything is safe now. Come and see for yourself, they tell the press. But the two reporters start to dig. They find something far worse than broken robots. The company has a secret plan to build perfect copies of powerful world leaders. Then they will swap the real people for the fakes and quietly control the whole planet. The reporters even discover copies of themselves hidden deep inside the resort. The most famous moment is a strange dream scene. Yul Brynner returns as the silent robot gunslinger from the first film, all in black, walking through a woman's nightmare. It was a treat for fans of the original. The problem was simple. Westworld felt fresh and scary. Future World felt slow and talky. The wonder was gone. And in its place was a lot of standing around and explaining. Audiences shrugged. The film brought in only about $4 million in the United States. That was a big drop from the first movie. Critics called it a pale copy. The dream of a robot movie empire was over almost before it began. And this was just the start of a terrible year for Hollywood. Number 17. The Slipper and the Rose. Here is a movie that looked like a guaranteed fairy tale success. In 1976, musicals were fading from fashion, but producer David Frost believed one lavish Cinderella story could bring them roaring back. With beautiful costumes, grand castles, unforgettable songs by the Sherman Brothers, and television heartthrob Richard Chamberlain in the lead, The Slipper and the Rose seemed destined for box office magic. Instead, it became one of the year's biggest disappointments in America. Richard Chamberlain plays Prince Edward, a royal who refuses to marry for politics and dreams of finding true love. Gemma Craven plays Cinderella, trapped by her cruel stepmother and stepsisters until a magical evening changes her life forever. The film follows the familiar fairy tale, but expands it into an epic musical filled with lavish ballroom scenes, royal drama, and elaborate musical numbers. The most memorable sequence is the magnificent royal ballroom dance. Hundreds of extras fill the palace, while Cinderella and the prince glide across the floor during the beautiful song, He Danced With Me. It remains one of the most visually stunning moments in any Cinderella adaptation. Unfortunately, audiences were no longer interested in expensive, old-fashioned musicals. While British moviegoers embraced the film, American audiences stayed away. Despite glowing production values and Academy Award nominations for its music, the film struggled badly at the United States box office. What was supposed to become the next great family musical instead became another costly lesson that Hollywood's golden age of lavish musicals had already come to an end. Number 16. The Last Hard Men. Now for a tough guy movie that arrived at the worst possible time. By 1976, the Western was dying. For years, cowboy films had ruled the box office, but tastes were changing fast, and the old style was fading away. The Last Hard Men tried to be one more great Western. Instead, it became one more sad flop. The movie has two big stars, and both were famous for playing hard men. Charlton Heston plays Sam Brigade, a retired lawman living a quiet life. James Coburn plays Zach Provo, a criminal brigade sent to prison long ago. Provo is part Native American, and he has spent every day behind bars dreaming of revenge. The story kicks off when Provo escapes from a brutal chain gang. He gathers a group of dangerous men around him. Then he sets out to destroy the man who locked him away. But he does not simply want to kill Brigade. He wants to make him suffer first. So he kidnaps Brigade's grown daughter, played by Barbara Hershey, to lure the old lawman into a final showdown in the desert. Brigade must strap on his guns one last time to save her. The movie is dark and violent. One scene where the daughter is threatened by the gang shocked audiences at the time and drew real anger from critics. The bigger problem was timing. In 1976, America was celebrating its 200th birthday. People wanted to feel proud and happy. They did not want a grim, mean-spirited cowboy chase. So the film sank fast. It never found a real crowd, and it earned very little money. Two big stars and a lot of gunfire were not enough to save it. The West, it turned out, was closing for business, and this film was one of the last to try. Number 15. Bugsy Malone. Here is a movie so strange it almost should not exist. Picture a gangster film, but every single role is played by a child. No adults on screen at all. The guns do not shoot bullets, they shoot cream. That was the wild idea behind Bugsy Malone in 1976, the first movie by director Alan Parker. The movie is set in 1920s New York, in the world of mobsters and secret bars, but all the tough guys are kids in fancy suits. Scott Baio plays the title role, Bugsy Malone, a smooth-talking young man caught between two rival gangs. A very young Jodie Foster plays Tallulah, a nightclub singer. The catchy songs were written by Paul Williams. In a funny twist, the kids do not even sing in their own voices. Grown-up singers were used instead. The plot follows a gang war. One boss wants to take over the whole city. His men attack their rivals using their famous splurge guns, which blast whipped cream all over their targets. Anyone who gets splurged is finished. The gangs even drive around in pedal-powered cars. The most famous scene is the giant finale, where everyone gets splurged with cream and pies, then joins together in a happy song. Children today still adore that ending. So why is it on this list? In Britain, the film did well and even won major awards, but in America, it flopped hard. Audiences did not know what to make of a children's gangster musical. Was it for kids? Was it for adults? Nobody could tell. So many people simply stayed home. The film lost money in the United States. Over time, it became a beloved cult classic that fans still watch. But in 1976, it was a box office miss that left the studio scratching its head. Number 14. Swashbuckler. After the giant shark movie Jaws made a fortune in 1975, every studio wanted the next big adventure. So in 1976, Universal reached back to a very old idea. They made a pirate movie called Swashbuckler. They hoped for sword fights, treasure, and a huge hit. They got a costly failure instead. The movie stars Robert Shaw, who had played the tough shark hunter in Jaws. Here he plays Ned Lynch, a bold and cheerful pirate captain. The great James Earl Jones plays his loyal friend Nick, with a gold tooth and a big laugh. Genevieve Bujold plays a brave noblewoman, and Peter Boyle plays the cruel villain who rules the island with an iron fist. The story is set in Jamaica in the 1700s. An evil official has seized power and is crushing the people. He throws honest men in prison and steals their land. So Ned Lynch and his crew of pirates decide to fight back. They team up with the rebels, storm the fortress, and try to free the island from the tyrant. There are rooftop chases, sword duels, and daring last-minute rescues. The best scenes are the sword fights. Robert Shaw was athletic and full of charm, and he swings across the screen with real energy and joy. But the movie felt old-fashioned. The kind of pirate film it copied had been popular decades earlier, back in the days of the star Errol Flynn. In 1976, audiences wanted something new and modern, so the fun and games fell flat. The film brought in less than $3 million in the United States, far below what a big adventure needed to survive. Universal's dream of a swashbuckling smash hit sank beneath the waves, and Robert Shaw's pirate never got to set sail again. Number 13. Fellini's Casanova. Few directors carried a bigger reputation than Federico Fellini. By 1976, he was considered one of the greatest filmmakers in the world. So when he announced an extravagant new version of the legendary lover Casanova, expectations could not have been higher. The production became one of the most expensive European films of its time. Sadly, the audiences never showed up. Donald Sutherland plays Giacomo Casanova, the famous adventurer whose life revolves around romance, pleasure, and endless travel across 18th-century Europe. Rather than presenting him as a charming hero, Fellini portrays him as a lonely, emotionally empty man, searching for meaning through one affair after another. The film moves from one surreal encounter to the next, filled with elaborate costumes, giant sets, bizarre festivals, and dreamlike imagery. The scene most people remember comes near the end when Casanova slowly dances with a beautiful mechanical doll. Instead of finding happiness with another person, he finds comfort in a lifeless machine. It is haunting, unforgettable, and perfectly captures the strange mood of the entire film. Behind the scenes, the production became nearly as dramatic as the movie itself. Costs spiraled out of control, production was temporarily halted, and disputes over the budget filled newspapers before the film even opened. Critics admired the visual ambition, but general audiences found the story cold and difficult to connect with. The expensive gamble failed to recover its enormous cost, making it one of the year's biggest financial disappointments, despite the legendary name behind the camera. Number 12. Gable and Lombard. Some love stories are so famous that Hollywood cannot resist filming them. The romance of Clark Gable and Carole Lombard was one of them. Gable was the king of Hollywood. Lombard was a funny, beautiful star. Their real-life love ended in tragedy. So in 1976, the studio Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer told their story. Critics called it one of the worst films of the entire year. The movie is called Gable and Lombard. James Brolin plays Clark Gable, the biggest male star of the 1930s. Jill Clayburgh plays Carole Lombard, the wild and witty actress he fell for. The film shows how they met, fought, and fell madly in love, even though Gable was still married to another woman, and the studio bosses feared a public scandal. The story leans on their romance and their many clashes. They argue, they laugh, they hide their affair from the world, and slowly, they build a life together. Red Buttons plays a studio helper. The film ends with the real tragedy that struck Lombard during the war. There is plenty of glossy 1930s glamour, fancy parties, and grand movie premieres. Brolin worked hard to look and sound just like Gable, even copying his voice. But there was a huge problem. Almost none of it was true. The film twisted the facts so much that experts were furious. It even showed the powerful boss Louis B. Mayer as a kind old man, when he was known to be harsh. The famous critic Gene Siskel named it one of the worst films of the whole year. He said making a movie this false about dead stars should almost be a crime. The film did earn a little money, close to $6 million, but it cost a lot and was seen as a total failure. And it hurt James Brolin's movie career for years to come. Number 11. Voyage of the Damned. Now we come to a film that flopped, yet told a story the world should never forget. Voyage of the Damned came out in 1976 with one of the largest star casts ever put in a single movie. The producer, Lou Grade, called it the biggest international cast ever gathered for a British film. It should have been a major event. Instead, it lost a great deal of money. The movie is based on a true and heartbreaking story. In 1939, a ship called the St. Louis left Germany. On board were 937 Jewish passengers, fleeing the Nazis. They were headed for Cuba, hoping to find safety and freedom. The film shows their long, tense journey across the sea. The cast is enormous. Faye Dunaway, Max von Sydow, Oscar Werner, James Mason, Lee Grant, Orson Welles, and many more all appear. Max von Sydow plays the ship's captain, a decent German sailor who is not a Nazi and who tries hard to protect his passengers. The story follows the fear and hope on board as the ship reaches Cuba, only to be turned away. Then the United States refuses them too. The ship is forced to sail back toward the danger it fled. The most powerful scene shows Lee Grant's character breaking down as the awful truth sinks in. It earned her an Oscar nomination. The real captain of the ship was a brave German man named Gustav Schroeder, who quietly worked to keep his passengers safe. The film was serious and sad, and it was released as a big event during the holiday season. But audiences did not want a heavy story about the Holocaust at Christmas time. So it flopped and failed to earn back its cost, even though it earned 3 Oscar nominations. In real life, only about 240 of those passengers survived the war. The movie failed at the box office, but the true story it told still matters deeply today. Number 10. One Ton Ton, the dog who saved Hollywood. Time for a comedy that had a great idea and threw it all away. One Ton Ton, the dog who saved Hollywood came out in 1976. The idea was to poke fun at Rin Tin Tin, the real dog who became a huge movie star in the silent film days. It sounded like harmless fun. It turned out to be a mess. It was even first called The Dog Who Saved Warner Brothers, before another studio bought it. The movie is set in 1920s Hollywood. Madeline Kahn plays Esty, a young woman who comes to town dreaming of stardom. Bruce Dern plays a studio bus driver who wants to be a director. And then there is the dog, One Ton Ton, who follows Esty around. To everyone's shock, the dog becomes the biggest star in all of Hollywood. The people are left standing in the shadow of a mutt. The plot follows the dog's rise and fall in show business. He becomes famous, wins a big award over 4 human actors, then loses everything. Then tries for a comeback. Art Carney plays the studio boss. The big draw was the cameos. The film crammed in dozens of real stars from old Hollywood, many of them very elderly, in tiny roles. Fans were meant to spot their favorites in the crowd. But the trick backfired. Many of those old stars were used so poorly that critics said it felt cruel. One writer said it should have been called The Dog Who Savaged Hollywood. The jokes fell flat, and the movie raced from one silly scene to the next with no heart at all. It cost about $4 million to make. It brought in only a little over $1 million in the United States. A sweet idea about a movie star dog had turned into an ugly flop. Number 9. Buffalo Bill and the Indians. Here is a film that put a beloved star and a famous director together, then watched them fail. Buffalo Bill and the Indians came out in 1976. It was directed by Robert Altman, who had just made the hit Nashville. It starred Paul Newman, one of the most bankable actors in the world. On paper, it could not miss. In theaters, it missed badly. The movie is about the real showman William Cody, better known as Buffalo Bill. In the 1880s, Cody ran a huge traveling show called the Wild West. It featured fake battles between cowboys and Native Americans, with Cody as the brave hero. Paul Newman plays him not as a hero, but as a vain, drinking fool who believes his own lies. His famous flowing hair is even a wig. Burt Lancaster plays the writer who helped build the Buffalo Bill legend. The film was made by the famous Italian producer Dino De Laurentiis, and it even bills itself on screen with a long, boastful show-off title. The story really begins when the great chief Sitting Bull joins the show. Cody wants him to play a savage villain in the fake battles, but Sitting Bull refuses to lie about his own people. The film becomes a battle between fake history and real history. One sharp scene shows Buffalo Bill and Annie Oakley, played by Geraldine Chaplin, doing target practice while talking about fame and lies. In the final scenes, Newman's character has a strange breakdown in front of a ghostly Sitting Bull. The problem was the year. In 1976, America was celebrating its 200th birthday. People wanted proud stories about their country. Altman gave them a movie that mocked a national hero. Audiences stayed away in droves. The film cost about $6 million and earned back only about 1/7 of that at home. It was Altman's first major flop, even though it later won a top prize at a big festival in Europe. Number 8. Harry and Walter Go to New York. What do you get when you pack 4 major stars into one comedy? Sometimes you get a hit. In 1976, you got a film that nearly wrecked a whole studio. Harry and Walter Go to New York had James Caan, Elliot Gould, Michael Caine, and Diane Keaton. That is an amazing cast. It was also a total flop, directed by Mark Rydell. The movie is set in the 1890s in New York. James Caan and Elliot Gould play Harry and Walter, 2 hopeless stage performers who are also small-time crooks. They get thrown in jail. There they meet a smooth, high-class bank robber, played by Michael Caine. Diane Keaton plays a fiery newspaper editor who fights for the poor. The plot follows a giant heist. Harry and Walter decide to rob a bank that everyone says cannot be robbed. They are up against the master thief, and they are helped by the crusading editor. It was meant to be a fun caper, in the style of the huge hit, The Sting. One scene has the 2 bumbling heroes sneak into a theater and join a play on stage while trying to break into a vault next door. Another has one of them nearly suffocate while locked inside a safe, which was played for laughs. But the movie was too long and simply not funny. It went far over budget and cost about $7 million, which people said almost sank Columbia Pictures. It brought in less than $5 million in the United States. One major magazine called it the prize turkey of the year. James Caan hated it so much that he later gave it a rude nickname and fired his own managers. 4 big stars could not save this sinking ship. Number 7. The Missouri Breaks. Now for one of the most famous flops in movie history. All because of who was in it. Imagine 2 of the greatest actors alive, on screen together for the first and only time. Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson. Both had just won Oscars. The studio was sure they had a $50 million hit. What they got was a legendary disaster. The movie is a Western called The Missouri Breaks, set in 1880s, Montana, and directed by Arthur Penn. Jack Nicholson plays Tom Logan, the leader of a gang of horse thieves. A rich landowner is fed up with the thieves and hangs one of them. So Logan and his gang plot revenge. In answer, the landowner hires a deadly hired gun to hunt them down one by one. That gunman is played by Marlon Brando. The music was written by John Williams, right between his work on Jaws and Star Wars. The plot is a cat-and-mouse chase across the wild frontier. Logan even falls in love with the landowner's daughter, which makes things far more dangerous. But the real story is Brando's wild performance. He changed his character on his own. He used strange accents, from Irish to a soft lisp. In one scene, he wears a granny dress and bonnet. In another, he talks lovingly to his horse. He even invented a weird weapon to kill with, and he played childish pranks on the crew. In one strange, tense scene, Nicholson's character finds Brando sitting in a bubble bath and cannot bring himself to shoot him. Each star was paid over $1 million, which made the huge failure sting even more. Fans were confused and disappointed. They wanted 2 titans trading blows. Instead, they got a slow, odd film with Brando clowning around. The movie cost more than $10 million, with Brando and Nicholson each paid a fortune. The studio expected 50 million and got about 14 million. It became a famous critical and money failure, and it helped push the Western toward its grave. Number 6. Nickelodeon. Some directors have a hot streak, then a cold one. In the early 1970s, Peter Bogdanovich was a golden boy. He made hit after hit. Then his luck ran out. Nickelodeon in 1976 was his third flop in a row, and it was an expensive one. The movie is a love letter to the earliest days of Hollywood, around the year 1914. Ryan O'Neal plays a lawyer who stumbles into the movie business and becomes a director. Burt Reynolds plays a cowboy who becomes a film star. Tatum O'Neal, Ryan's real daughter, also appears, and Brian Keith plays a movie boss. The plot follows this ragtag group as they make silent movies in the wild early years of the industry. Back then, a powerful company tried to control all filmmaking with patents, and small crews had to run and hide just to make their films. The story shows their adventures, their fights, and their love triangle over the same leading lady. It ends with a grand recreation of a famous early movie premiere. There are many old-style slapstick scenes with pratfalls, chases, and a runaway hot air balloon that crashes onto a moving train, but the film was flat and far too long. During filming, Burt Reynolds collapsed on set, and no one could figure out why, so shooting had to stop for 2 weeks. The movie went over budget and cost about $8 million. It flopped hard. Ryan O'Neal later called it a terrible experience and said the script had been ruined. Bogdanovich was so hurt by the failure that he took 3 years off from directing. A film made out of pure love for the movies had ended his winning streak for good. Number 5. Pipe dreams. Sometimes a hit singer can fill concert arenas but cannot fill movie theaters. That painful lesson arrived in 1976 with Pipe Dreams, the feature film debut of music superstar Gladys Knight. Fresh off enormous success with Gladys Knight and the Pips, the studio hoped her popularity would carry over to the big screen. Instead, the movie quietly disappeared, almost as soon as it opened. Gladys Knight plays Maria Wilson, a determined woman who leaves Atlanta for Alaska in search of a better future during the construction of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. She hopes the booming pipeline industry will give her family a fresh start. Barry Hankerson plays her troubled husband, whose reckless behavior constantly threatens their relationship. Together they struggle through harsh weather, difficult jobs, and personal heartbreak, while trying to build a new life far from home. One of the strongest moments comes when Maria finally stands up for herself after enduring months of disappointment and broken promises. Gladys Knight brings real warmth and honesty to the emotional scenes, reminding audiences why she was already one of America's most beloved performers. Sadly, strong performances could not rescue a confused screenplay. Critics complained that the story wandered without a clear direction, shifting awkwardly between romance, drama, and social issues. Despite the unique Alaskan setting and an appealing soundtrack, audiences ignored the film almost completely. Instead of launching Gladys Knight into Hollywood stardom, Pipe Dreams became another forgotten financial disappointment from one of the toughest years at the box office. Number 4. The Last Tycoon. For our top 4, we save the biggest names and the biggest falls. The Last Tycoon came out in 1976. It was the final film by Elia Kazan, one of the most respected directors in all of history. It starred a young Robert De Niro, fresh off Taxi Driver. It had a cast full of legends, and it became a quiet, crushing bomb. The movie is based on an unfinished book by the great writer F. Scott Fitzgerald. De Niro plays Monroe Starr, a brilliant young movie producer in 1930s Hollywood. He is the boy genius who runs everything at his studio. He is smart, driven, and slowly working himself to death. The character was based on a real Hollywood wonder boy named Irving Thalberg. The plot follows Starr as he juggles temperamental stars, angry writers, and studio politics. He also falls for a mysterious woman who reminds him of his dead wife. The cast is stunning. Robert Mitchum, Tony Curtis, Jack Nicholson, and many others all appear, some for just a scene or two. There is even a brief moment where De Niro and Nicholson share the screen and nearly come to blows. Fans of both actors treasure that scene. In another quiet moment, Starr calms a nervous, fading movie star by gently acting out a made-up scene for him, showing just how coolly he ran the whole studio. So why did it fail? De Niro played the role very quietly, holding everything deep inside. Many viewers found it slow and cold. Kazan himself later admitted he made the film mainly for the money, calling it a job for cash. Audiences did not connect with it. The film cost around $5.5 million and brought in less than $2 million. One of the greatest directors ended his long and famous career not with a bang, but with a whimper. It was a sad goodbye for a true master. Number 3. A Matter of Time. Our top 3 are heartbreaking, because they wrecked people who deserved so much better. A Matter of Time came out in 1976. It was the last film ever directed by the legendary Vincente Minnelli. It starred his own daughter, Liza Minnelli, and the great Ingrid Bergman. It should have been a proud family moment. Instead, it was a public humiliation. The movie is set in Old Italy. Liza Minnelli plays Nina, a poor young maid working in a rundown hotel in Rome. There she meets an aging countess, played by Ingrid Bergman. The countess was once a famous beauty who charmed the richest men in Europe. Now she is broke and lost in her memories. The film was also the last for the actor Charles Boyer, and the first for a young Isabella Rossellini. The plot follows the deep bond between the two women. The countess fills Nina's head with glorious tales of her past. Inspired by these stories, Nina begins to dream of becoming a star herself. The film mixes real life with Nina's daydreams and a few musical numbers. The best moment is Liza singing an old song in a grand ballroom, with all her power on full display. Sadly, many people in Hollywood believed the only reason Vincente Minnelli got the job at all was because of his famous daughter, and that cruel talk hung over the whole shoot. But the studio destroyed the film. It was a cheap studio, and they took the movie away from Vincente Minnelli. They cut it from 3 hours down to about 97 minutes. The result made little sense. Minnelli was so ashamed that he disowned it completely. The famous director Martin Scorsese even took out ads in the trade papers to protest what the studio had done. The film cost about $5 million and earned only about $2 million. It never even opened in Britain or France. It was a total flop, and a heartbreaking final chapter for a Hollywood master. Number 2. Mikey and Nicky. Before we reach number 1, we have a film that became a Hollywood legend for all the wrong reasons. Most flops fail quietly. This one fell apart in a way so wild that people still tell the story today. Mikey and Nicky came out in 1976. It was made by the brilliant Elaine May, a gifted writer and director. This movie nearly ended her career for good. The movie is a dark crime story. John Cassavetes plays Nicky, a small-time gangster hiding in a cheap hotel room. He has stolen money from his boss, and now there is a contract out on his life. Peter Falk plays Mikey, his oldest friend since childhood, the only person he trusts in the world. The plot covers one long, tense night. Mikey promises to help Nicky escape the city before the killer finds him. But a hired hitman, played by Ned Beatty, is hunting them through the streets, and Mikey may not be the loyal friend he seems to be. The two men wander through bars, dark alleys, and a lonely cemetery, fighting and remembering their whole lives together, love and hate all tangled up. One small scene shows Mikey trying to buy cream for Nicky's sick stomach, and the tiny errand slowly boils over into anger. But the real disaster was behind the camera. Elaine May shot more than 1 million feet of film, far more than anyone needed. She left cameras running for hours, even when the actors walked away. The budget more than doubled. When the studio tried to take control, she reportedly hid 2 reels of the movie, so they could not finish it without her. The fight dragged on for years, with lawsuits and nearly 2 years of editing. The film was finally rushed into theaters for only a few days, and bombed. Elaine May did not direct another movie for 10 long years. Number 1. The Blue Bird. And now, the worst of them all. The film's so bad that not even Elizabeth Taylor, one of the most famous women on the entire planet, could save it. In 1976, that film was The Blue Bird. It was a very special movie, the first big film made together by America and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. It was meant to prove that the two enemy nations could create something beautiful. It became a giant, embarrassing flop. The movie is a children's fantasy, directed by the famous George Cukor. 2 poor kids go on a magical quest to find the blue bird of happiness. Along the way, they are joined by the spirits of a dog, a cat, water, bread, fire, and more, all in human form. They travel to strange kingdoms of the past and the future. Elizabeth Taylor plays 4 different roles, including a witch and the spirit of light. Jane Fonda plays Night. Ava Gardner and Cicely Tyson also appear. The movie had a rough start even before filming began. Big names like Katharine Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine were once set to star, but both dropped out. Taylor even asked the singer David Bowie to join, and he politely said no. The plot follows the children as they search far and wide, only to learn that happiness was in their own backyard all along. There is a tender scene where the children hold what they think are blue birds, only to find the little creatures have died in their hands. It is a quiet lesson about lost dreams, but almost everything went wrong. The shoot in the Soviet Union was miserable, the food made people sick, and Elizabeth Taylor caught a serious illness. The equipment was old, and no one could understand each other. All of Taylor's early scenes had to be filmed again. The movie went far over budget, costing millions more than planned. near $12 million in the end. It brought in only about $3.5 million in the United States. Critics tore it apart. One even said Taylor had never looked worse. A movie meant to unite the world had become the biggest disaster of the year. So there you have it, the 18 worst box office disasters of 1976. Big stars, big budgets, and big flops. From robot parks to pirate ships to a magical blue bird, none of them found the crowds they needed. Which one shocked you the most? Did we miss your favorite flop? Tell us in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this trip through Hollywood's worst year, you know what to do next.